Smallville's episode Conspiracy was the worst. Did you really think I was going to say that? No. I want to apologize for saying that one of my comments that I put in the last video saying that Persuasion was the worst episode I had seen of Smallville to date. Thankfully, the people that watch my videos posted comments and reminded me of episodes like Hero and Requiem. Well, you didn't remind me of Requiem, but that came to mind later. I hated Requiem. I am sorry. It was just bad decision after bad decision. So yeah, I regret that I said it. I take back my comment that it was the worst episode of Smallville I'd seen to date. Definitely, though, it is still the episode of Season 9 that I hated the most. So let's get into the episode Conspiracy. Okay, so basically the Kandorians are being captured by this scientist that they sort of brought back from the dead, put little like kryptonite needles into his head, and he somehow came back. Sort of like how they did with John Corbin in the episode Metallo. And this guy, he is very upset by this. I think I'd be a little... Like, even Lois is like, you should be grateful they brought you back from the dead. But he's, like, freaking out. So he decides to capture all of them. The one that we see him capture is actually Feora's sister. I didn't know that Feora had a sister. Her name is Vala. And I might be mistaken on the casting, but I'm pretty sure she's one of the girls from Gossip Girl. If not, she looks a lot like her, because I almost swore it was one of the people. I don't watch the show, but I know from the advertisements that looked very, almost dead on like her. Or it might have been the lighting, I don't know. Anyway, so with this episode, the Kandorians are being captured, and it really drives this whole wedge between Zod and Clark, where they're sort of having to work together, but they're really trying to stay distant at the same time, because Zod is upset about the tower thing. Now, I am watching in Canada, if you guys didn't know, and the digital, like, streaming now between, because I got rabbit ears for TV reception, aren't I old school? So yeah, with that happening, I missed a good chunk of the episode, well, sort of like off and on, because helicopters, for some reason, were going around every minute, which was disrupting the feed, but I'm pretty sure I caught up with what I need to know. I think, though, that Zod knows that Clark is the one that destroyed the tower. Don't take my word for it, because somebody else would probably tell you the truth or not, but that's just my assumption from what I got. Anyway, so Zod's trying to investigate into this whole with the Daily Planet. You see this really stealthy, kind of cunning mind to him in this episode, where he really takes it to a whole new level. There's this whole slow motion sequence where he's like grabbing a press pass, grabs a pair of glasses and stuff like that. And it really shows him as sort of this, you know, this soldier who really knows, he's been like trained in stuff like this, to take things when out with people not noticing and stuff like that. So yeah, Clark is trying to figure out this whole thing. As that's happening, Lois, and she meets him at meets Clark in the episode, and she tells him that okay, this is coming from the person who said in the last episode, things are going way too fast for me. And then as soon as she sees Clark, it's all, let's flirt like all the time. Like, what the heck's going on with her now? Like, does she have that big of a mood swing? Anyway, so while that's happening, that gets interrupted by Feora, who wants to find out what happened to her sister. And Lois ends up getting kidnapped by the scientist. I forget the guy's name, I'm sorry. And he wants her to write a story about the aliens because he thinks it's the only way people are going to believe him. And this was pretty much I know every season it feels like there's a horror episode. Last season, I think it was Bride when we first saw Doomsday. It was a bit like Cloverfield, like they even called him that as a nickname. But it really felt like the horror episode because a lot of nitty-gritty blood and just like the suspenseful music and the dark, really dark scenes. So yeah, this is, I would say, Smallville Season 9's horror episode. And Lois gets kidnapped by the scientist. Zod breaks in. He ends up getting shot. We saw that in promo. And I was wondering, like, how serious of the bullet wound. Like, he actually was bleeding pretty profoundly. So, while that's happening, Chloe has been borrowing money from Oliver. And when Oliver confronts her about it, he turns on the music to try and drown them out because he thinks that Tess might be listening. And she's kind of like all flirty with him too. Like, what is with the women in this episode? What's with the women in Smallville in this episode? They're all like, all of a sudden, for no reason at all, just, oh, let's make out with the first guy we see. Like, what the heck's going on? So I don't know. Maybe that lipstick from Crimson is still like passing around Smallville or something. And the other thing that I love about this episode is the fact that since like Savior, we've never gotten another thing where Chloe said, "Oh yeah, my husband was murdered." Like, what the heck does she have like that short of a grievance period? Anyway, so yeah, while that's happening, we find out that Chloe has been borrowing money from Oliver to get kryptonite weaponry, which is all that stuff we saw in Pandora. All the arrows, all the bullets and stuff like that. And Tess is trying to figure out where it is so she can grab that, and Oliver ends up moving it. So yeah, Chloe has probably as much kryptonite as Batman. Chloe is really starting to feel like almost like the light-hearted but dark Batman incarnation and female Batman incarnation of Smallville. Because she's really not. I don't think she's really trusting Clark a lot more. And also, there's this part of the episode where Feora said to Clark, he mentioned something about like Jor-El, and he said something along the line. She said something along the lines of, "Yeah, even though your father and Zod had their differences, he was one of Zod's truest friends." Okay, lady, maybe you weren't there. Actually, I know you were there. What, he was beating the living crap out of Jor-El and told, well, you weren't in the other one, but he said to him, "You are as dead to me as my son." Wow, that's two buddies getting along, isn't it? Oh my gosh, could you be that ignorant? Anyway, so what happens is Zod, he dies from his gunshot wound. Clark gets kryptonite to cut his hand. The blood goes into his wound. Now, somebody said in a comment on Persuasion, I think it was a Canadian guy, something, and he said like, "Oh, this guy's gonna freak out when he sees that Clark's magic blood healed him." You know what? Clark's blood is actually in the show has healed people, and in some ways it makes sense. In some ridiculous way. So yeah, he when he does that, Zod's healed, and there's also like this part where Zod says to Clark, where he says like, "My father made me promise that I would save you," and Zod said, and this is really a double entendre, "You know you can't save me." So it's really saying, you know you can't save me from this gunshot wound, and also you know you can't prevent me from becoming who I am. And so he's healed by Clark's blood, and there's this scene that comes afterward where Lois and Clark are talking, and Lois has a blood sample of an alien that she wants to prove to a laboratory to confirm it, and it actually has one or two text messages from somebody called the Wall. Now, if you don't know from the comics, the Wall is the nickname for Amanda Waller, that lady back in Absolute Justice. So Checkmate, and also that symbol of the chess piece that we saw at the end, was confirming that Checkmate is starting to become a more recurring subject in Smallville. So after that happens, they actually stole the blood sample. You could not be more stealing it right under her nose. Like, she's seriously like a foot away from the desk, and they're almost facing the desk, and somehow they got past it. I don't know how they did that. But then, so Clark talks to Zod, and he says, like, "Thank you for saving me," and stuff like that. So Zod's on top of the Daily Planet building as soon as Clark leaves, and then we see Zod jump off the building and fly. I thought that was going to happen as soon as the blood went into Zod's bullet wound, because it's Smallville's logic. Like, I almost give up on it anymore. So yeah, with this happening, I really think that because he has powers now, he's not going to want to turn the yellow sun red, because that would take away his powers if it was giving the Kandorians theirs. So I wonder how he's going to get people their powers. They showed it in the trailer that they go to the fortress, so that might be the answer. So that is pretty much all I could think of for the episode. This is really, I know we're on another hiatus now, and that sucks, but it is a great episode. Especially the last scene, just a phenomenal episode to leave us like lingering for more. So that's it. I hope you guys had a great episode last night. I'm sorry that I only got this today. Alright, see you guys, bye.